everybody. So, we have a wonderful panel now to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to talk about the practical realities of new measurement innovations, currency developments, getting stuff done. And to start us off, we're going to start by getting excited. So, let's start here. Mike, what innovations in measurement and currency development are you most excited about? What's happening that the audience here should be standing up out of their seats and cheering about?
I think look, Tom's ambition for Origin is phenomenal, and if they get there and we get to a standard way of measuring cross-platform reach, it takes a huge topic off the table and lets us rest assured that that's dealt with, and we can move into the space of attribution, which is for me the more important topic that we need to get to. And all of the big data sets that we're seeing connected to smart panels, giving us a sense of attribution and cause and effect are the things that make me really optimistic about the next 3 years.
Great. Kristin, what's exciting you?
Near and dear to my heart, I will echo what you just said. Very much on the attribution front, and actually we're starting to get into identifying persuadables, people that actually will be moved by advertising when exposed, and then beyond that into prediction. So if we can understand who might be moved by advertising, and then we create campaigns that generate results, we then use those results to predict the impact of the media in the next campaign.
Which is very cool.
I thought so too.
Good. Rob, what are you excited about?
Well, for me, it's unifying this whole conversation. We've been talking about unified TV and video. As an SSP, that's where our focus is. So to be able to agnostically look at audiences across apps, TVs, using data sets to ultimately increase the ways we can measure and lead performance. That's what we're up to.
Okay. Last but not least, does any of this excite you? And if not, what does?
Yeah. I think so. It's really refreshing to have multiple ways of measuring things. I think we've been stuck for too many years obsessed with effectively one thing, reach. We need to understand that more deeply, and at the same time we need more competition in the research area. So for example, in the US we have many options. In many other countries we seem to have one de facto piece of information. We need more alternatives. So I think that's very exciting.
Brilliant. Is everyone excited?
Yes.
We're going to have to work harder.
There.
Okay, we'll get there. Okay, it wouldn't be a measurement panel without a bit of chat about definitions. So let's just start with you, Mike. There seems to be a growing divide, or perhaps a plethora of options in terms of what we actually do measure. We've got exposures, reach and frequency, outcomes, a whole set of different things. But today, when you think about the modern marketeer's portfolio, what's in it? What are the different measurement options that you think about? How do they fit together?
I guess, well, I'm going to chat. Advertisers, CEOs don't want to advertise. They want to grow. I think someone said that on an earlier panel. They want to grow. They want to understand the causality between advertising and their growth, and they want to see all of us as an industry figure out how we can create a system of consistent growth. And so for me, the measurement in terms of panel-based accuracy, single source of truth, as a standard metric from which we can then iterate, create hypotheses around growth, and then use it to measure attribution back against, is how I think about the space. And I'd like to spend more time in that sort of growth systems thinking than in the basic, has my advertising gone out and created an impression in front of it.
And does the current landscape of solutions allow you to do that successfully in the UK?
More than ever before,
Right.
and I think the moving even in the UK from 15 regions to 165 individual small areas to try and figure out cause and effect in those smaller geo-postcode type areas is amazing for us in this 2023 as a standard, not as something you pay a huge premium for.
Okay, Ross, are you on the same page?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the more granular we can get with it, absolutely, definitely, that's great. But on your first part of the question, there are lots of different things that we need to measure. So we might want to, at some stage, understand the basics. So I love that point. Did the stuff actually go out? And in some of the countries we work in, it is an issue. We don't even know the thing ran. So that is helpful, and I don't want to put that down too much. And it's amazing work that everyone's done over the years, particularly in the 70s and 80s, to get to that point. But it's 2022 now. And we want to know, are people are they paying attention? We want to know how long they're paying attention for. We want to know, is that high or low level attention? So that's attention to the one side. We want to know, are they spending time with our brands? And most importantly, we want to have single source data that can work from the start all the way to the end, because none of us properly understand how 8 billion people on the planet really think and do things. And we can't pretend that we do. We can't just draw a line and say, oh, it looks like reach is therefore the biggest definer, or it looks like attention is the biggest definer. It's probably way more complex than we ever think it is. So that single source data, I think, is going to get us to all sorts of different measurements, which we always thought weren't that important.
And presumably, I mean, Kristin, this is music to your ears, presumably.
It is, yes. So for us, measurement is what happened yesterday, but the most important thing is having the appropriate data in the appropriate amounts, right? So 605 uploads at 2 billion tuning events a night, and then we append second-by-second content data. So we append the metadata from one source, and then we also append all of the advertising data. So we're basically measuring 9,000 years of viewership data every day, and we have 27 months that go back. So it's all in a giant bucket, but it is tied to one particular identity spine. So it's completely anonymized. We can, through a clean room or through a crosswalk, compare it back to any kind of outcomes or any sort of planning or media schedule. So, but it is privacy compliant, but it's very, very granular. And so it's really like, we're just always excited with people who come in and say, okay, we'll use geolocation data, or we'll give you our pixels. And again, our focus is heavily on attribution and outcomes. So we feel like we have a very good, clean data lake that is very carefully managed. And then everything that we append against it is in a consistent basis against the same household across. We have 102 million households in the US that we have a full file on, and then we do the viewing for about 22 million every day.
Wow. Okay, lots of cool stuff.
It's a little bigger over there,
But it is pretty cool. Rob, quickly, you, in terms of what we're trying to actually measure, have you seen views and preferences change? I mean, that's what the rest of the panel is basically describing.
And I think we're doing a really good job of talking about lots of things, but the most common thing that people are here to talk about is migration of audiences, fragmentation into numerous different ways of consuming video. We invested in Vida, which has given us the ability for ACR data, which allows you to have real-time viewership. So you understand what people are watching in real time through the video operating system, which is on Hisense, JCV, Toshiba TVs. It allows you to map your linear in real time. So we bought 30 slots, and I think the slide came up earlier about 15 frequency for that week being an annoyance. With the ACR data, which stands for auto content recognition, in real time can understand where that audience is, and then with the CTV line, allow you to hit that frequency closer to where you want it to be, where it's not annoying, and top up those light TV viewers that we've seen in some of the slides before.
So, I mean, I'm interested from a marketeer's point of view. You've got these incredibly sophisticated solutions have been built, which offer marketeers things in relation to attribution and outcomes, attention metrics and so on, which just weren't here in the same way 10 years ago. Has it generally transformed your world as a marketeer?
I think it's transformed the opportunity, but I don't think, and I was just at the WFA the other day with all the other media managers from around the world, and it's hard to adopt it across the board. There's one or two who I know really well, who are really brilliant, and they were very honest saying that, we're a big company, it's going to take a long time for this to happen. So that's certainly the case with us. I think it's important for all companies to experiment in each of those areas. So, for example, in Australia, we're doing a really excellent experimentation in attention, which is why I keep on talking about it. But we're doing little experiments in different places to understand what really works so well. But I think it's important for all of us to support that kind of thinking and develop that kind of thinking and invest in it, because, again, we're not really we don't know, none of us know what the future could possibly be.
Can I just be controversial just
please.
A little bit? Because some of the agencies, Dentsu and others, are very forward-looking in a lot of this, but others are still, well, if the brand doesn't ask me for it, I'm not going to provide it, because I don't want to tell them I've been selling them a 14 frequent. I mean, they'd figure that out anyway, but just that we need, like, I love what you're saying, and I'd love to see more of it, but I think at times, unless the client is really pushing it, there are definitely other agencies that are willing to just keep doing it the way they've always done it, which gives us less of an opportunity to really advance what we're trying to do as an industry.
Because that was a question I actually had for Mike. The good news is, as a marketeer, you have an unprecedented, plethora of riches out there to choose from. How do you help your clients navigate this smorgasbord of solutions?
Ross gave part of the answer, which is how do you create small test and learn experiments? The increasing data that you have in a platform gives you a world of insights that we've never had before. It's bringing the craft of AV planning, TV planning back to the fore, rather than just to sort of industrialize, buy and move on. And people are creating hypotheses around growth and what it will take, whether it be attention or different metrics in different markets and different geolocations. And so how we're seeing that play out in a very controlled test and learn back against the ground truth of data is how we move our clients on an individual basis forward.
And are you finding that there's no one-size-fits-all solution? Different clients will want slightly different things?
I think at the moment, advancing awareness gains is being driven heavily through attention because it's obvious, it's scalable, it's achievable, and we're starting to really see, and I saw some of the numbers from the T-Vision Lumen team earlier, really demonstrable results. So I think there are things at play now that are scaled and will become common practice. And then I think every individual advertiser has its own secret source of growth in their own sales data that they're trying to exploit. And it's matching that with addressable television solutions and finding those little experiments that add the plethora, the smorgasbord, I suppose.
Okay, let's talk about data. Kristin, I know it's pretty much your favourite topic. So we're clearly building the next generation of measurement solutions on various different data sets.
Yes.
And those data sets offer tremendous opportunities. They also bring some challenges.
For sure.
Tell us a bit about your experience of working with those data assets and what it tells you about those challenges and opportunities. What is data good for, first of all?
Data is great as long as the data is good, which sounds oxymoronic, but if you think it through, it kind of makes sense. The set-top box data that we've been working with for, in my current company and prior for the last 15, 20 years is great because it's granular. Now we've, working with companies like Conviva who aggregate all the ACR data that you were just talking about, folding that into the mix. Then, we don't do, snackables yet because it's a whole different ballgame to get into that. But between connected TV, traditional, and then some forms of digital, you can really get a sense of the elements that you'd need to create a true cross-platform look at where either the content, which is an interesting sidebar if we have time, but where the advertising is actually being placed. And then with things like T-Vision, ultimately figuring out who's in the room, not just in the household. But for now, I think we're happy to know that it hit the household. We can confirm that it hit the household through, the ASRun logs for digital and then in other ways. But there's a ton out there. It's just a matter of figuring out your edit rules. How long is the tune? Is it a very long cricket match or has somebody been asleep for 3 hours? All these different elements and creating ways to allow people to feel confident that the way that they're looking at the data and the data sources themselves are reliable enough to then build this pyramid on top.
So I want to ask the same question to you, Rob, and then I've got a nasty question I want to ask Ross, so get ready, Ross. Rob, you're working with a slightly different data set.
Yeah.
How do you correct for the sorts of errors or biases that Kristin's talking about?
Well, so for ACR, you can plug anything into the DMP to then match it. So instead of us saying, these are the metrics that you should measure on, we can create something bespoke for you. So Unilever are working with us on something which is quite exciting for next year. We plug in their TV ad, we tell them what the reach is, we tell them what the frequency is, we tell them what they're watching, and then we give that live data back to them. So instead of us coming together, what we believe in is you should ask the advertiser what they're trying to achieve. And most of the work we'll be doing is about TV extension. Because the audience has moved, because it's becoming more expensive, and because marketers don't have a plan to fix that yet. So most of our conversations are around that. But the exciting thing is you can sort of add anything into that. So you can do sequential messaging, which we've heard before, but to conquesting ads. So if you're automotives, you want to be the next CTV ad after your direct competitor, that ACR data can allow you to identify that audience and then target it. So unfortunately, it's not a this is it, but it's very exciting because it's anything that you as a CMO think is exciting, we can look at doing, which is pretty exciting.
Okay, so Ross, here's the nasty question, and I'm going to ask the same question to Mike. So you've got all these amazing companies coming to you with state-of-the-art, sophisticated, uber-cool measurement solutions based on various big data sets. How do you subject them to scrutiny and audit? How do you tell that what they're telling you from this data bears any resemblance to reality? Tell us a bit about test and learn.
Yeah, that's it. We test and learn. It's an important part of our business, and it's an important part of the way we go about it, which is to say that a small portion of what we do, not a tiny stupid number, but a small portion of what we do, is set there to do something, learn from it, and not feel bad if it didn't work out, because we actually learned something from it. And the reality is, in fairness, most media opportunities aren't a waste of money.
Right.
Nothing's totally useless. So we're not going to gain anything else at all out of that. But there is an intermediary between all of this, which is the media agencies. And you sort of touched on it. We really need to call out the media agencies sometimes. And we work with Dentsu, it's fabulous, in Hong Kong, for example, and we work with other wonderful media agencies. So I'm not picking on anyone specifically, but sometimes you can tell that the agency is hell-bent on broadcast TV, and broadcast TV is sold on 30-second reach. So they want to compare a 30-second reach to a 30-second TV ad run on Facebook, and say, well, a 30-second TV ad on a TV channel which you can't change is much better at delivering a 30-second ad on TV than a 30-second ad on Facebook. We would never run. We would never run a 30-second ad on a static billboard. We would never run a 30-second TV ad on radio and then say, well, the problem is nobody got to see the visuals. So I think we need a little bit more objectivity from our agencies.
Right.
They all come in with a clear view. It's great, and if you're an astute marketer, you should know what the view comes from. So I wouldn't expect somebody from radio to try and sell me that radio is crap. But I think at the moment, we just need a little bit more objectivity and a bit more science.
So Mike, is it corruption, incompetence, or are you just short of staff?
Can I tick all three?
I didn't say that, okay?
I know, I'm just hypothesizing away.
I'm going to answer a different question, which is I'm thinking...
Excellent paneling.
Yeah. You have to have your own source of truth to make sense of everybody that's coming to
But just so you've got great clients like Asahi, and they're saying, tell us who to use, and you go through this process.
So we have our own panel,
Right.
CCS, Customer Consumers Panel. It's a global panel, 15,000 people in the UK, 110,000 globally. And for the starter point, it's giving us a read on what a true view of reach is. Not in real time, but a planning view of reach and how you optimize across all screens. And so if you've got that baseline data, it's got Barb and Facebook and YouTube and lots of our video partners' data plugged into it, you're able to address, assume for yourself whether the hypotheses that you're being brought are true, have basis in the data that you're seeing. And that's what we use to try and orientate test and learn programs to our clients.
Got it.
Of course, and to the grace of everyone's trying to sell what they've got, and they're trying to understand what they've got, you've got to anchor it to something, and we try and anchor it to our clients' customers. How do we model our customer? What's the customer behavior? Does this gel? And therefore, are we prepared to invest and create a test and learn out of it?
And just to fight your corner a moment, presumably your clients are at very differing levels of readiness and preparedness for dealing with some of these questions.
I think...
some lean more on you, some lean a bit less on you.
Yeah, and I think we're about to enter into an economic climate that's not going to be a friend in some camps of test and learn programs, because they'll want to go back to what's easy, but actually the necessity of planning out of inflation for 2023 is driving some of the most interesting planning conversations we've had for many a year, and clients are ready to onboard new screens, new methodologies, new methods of gaining a share of voice advantage on competition.
Can I again, sorry, interrupting, American, sorry. The point, particularly with Dentsu, where we've done a number of campaigns, like I feel like the clients that are willing to share first-party data in order to determine, really, like you need people that are going to allow you to have something to compare against, right?
Yeah.
So like I think we did campaigns for you guys where it was an automotive company. They placed a comprehensive schedule based on recommendations from your secret sauce, and then it ran. But then afterwards, we had a web pixel so we could see who built which cars online, and then ultimately they did feed in through a crosswalk or through a clean room test drives and purchases. So the agency was able to go back and say, this is how many people saw the ad, this is how many times they saw it, these are which ads pulled, these are which portions they went to on the website, which vehicles they were interested in, which cars they test drove and which cars they bought, and then took all of the revenue from the incremental car sales and backed it in and divided it by what they spent on the media campaign. But
That's
it was
interesting to
because
me.
there was a client that was willing to
share.
throw down, right?
Again, because measurement's always been a team sport, but the team is getting bigger.
Yep.
I mean, put another way. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left to get through 3 really interesting questions. So we're going to move at take no
John
prisoners
wrote them.
pace. So attention. Let's start with attention. So we've spoken a bit about attention, generating more attention, and everyone knows it is. Fast forward the tape. How is attention and the industrialization of attention in your planning and buying going to change the way you plan and buy?
Very interesting. So, as I mentioned, we're doing 3 tests this very month. We have planned according to understanding attention. What's really interesting is we don't necessarily always want to have high attention. So, I work for a beer company, Asahi, we make Peroni and Grolsch, etc. We want to make sure that we are using our advertising to nudge you gently before you go into the category and gently remind you when you come out of the category. We're not always trying to get your full attention to give you a full essay on the entire product. We do that in the bar. That's a separate thing, which we have to measure for separately, by the way. But for the advertising piece, which is that short stuff, the attention is really interesting in that the work has shown us, or it is showing us, that sometimes low attention opportunities are still quite good at getting that outcome, whereas they're not necessarily as fantastic. Compare that to, say, Piccadilly Circus. We've got a fabulous big billboard for Peroni, and the person here is responsible is here for it. That was amazing, but that has a role. There's a different role. So I think the attention space is really interesting there. I would love to see a way that we can actually support it where we trade on it, but I imagine that is an incredibly difficult task.
Mike, you're on the same page, but essentially, I think
effective attention is what you're aiming for, and so maximising it is personalised to the client and the space you're in. I mean, and I guess the question, why not? We're seeing 110% increase in attention versus open marketplace.
Right.
Reassuringly, only 10% versus premium marketplaces, but still 1%. And we saw some of the numbers earlier. We've sort of witnessed 15 to 20% advantage in TV planning with sort of observed attention environments being used rather than real time. So why wouldn't you use it?
To our sofa panelists, are you both friends of attention? Are you comfortable?
Yeah. I mean, we've been doing face coding for 7 years, so it's been a part of our DNA. We started the journey as emotion, so face coding of how the ad made you feel. And obviously with that you can track attention and eyes on and different levels of arousal. And we've tried to simplify it as much as possible. We give you a score in your region and in your vertical, and if you score 5, you're doing as well as everyone else, to simplify it to the things that matter, so your region and stuff like that. And then obviously recommendations on how you can improve that through creative optimization and audiences. So A/B testing, which we talked about earlier, different geos, stuff like that. So big fan, always been a part of our DNA.
Kristin, some media owners seem a little anxious about attention. Are they right to be anxious?
I mean, to me, it's more, I'm not answering, I'm going to do it, Mike. I'm not going to answer the question you asked me. I'm going to talk about persuadables. So what we do is we break audiences into 4 buckets. So the advertising will be in front of people who might be moved by advertising, would never be moved by advertising, are disinterested completely, or are persuadable by the advertising. And so we take a matched control, which is we take the audience for the advertising and then we create an exact lookalike, right? So it's not a little old lady over here and a soccer mom over here, and they both, so one's exposed, one's not exposed to the advertising, but they look exactly the same. And we've done over 30 campaigns now where we've identified what we think is the persuadable audience in this context, and then run the campaigns so we could compare match versus not, and then did the persuadables respond in a higher way than everybody else, and we've proven it out multiple times. So it's not attention metrics per se, but it's like if you're likely to respond and a great agency and a great planning team will come up with the right audience, then we break it up into those groups, identify the persuadables and hit them, and then you also figure out what moved it. Was it X frequency? Was it a particular creative? And you get into, again, these sort of interesting test and learn abilities so that you just keep getting smarter and smarter.
And should media owners be nervous?
Sorry?
Should media owners be nervous?
I don't think so. I think media owners, ideally they'll be able to do less with more, which is a better consumer experience, right? That's the goal,
Optimize the inventory. Every type of attention has a value for a task.
But I think what makes some of them nervous is that someone else is telling them the value of their media, rather than
But
them.
I guess agencies have done that year in, year
Yeah.
out, and I'm not so worried about trading on it. I think it's our advantage in a trading situation to be able to bid for quizzes over soap shows, because that's where the attention that's required for that advertiser is.
I'm just interested because there's a sort of media-only push at the moment to define TV and to define quality, and certainly some people on the sell side will say we're kind of trying to fight back a little bit against attention by saying that high-value content is high value for advertisers. Yeah. But we shall see.
Proven by what, though, I guess is the question.
Therein lies the rub, I think. We only have no minutes left. So, like everyone else, we'll go on for a little bit. So final
Tom didn't.
Tom was very good, actually. You're right. Origin. They do what they say they're going to do. They do it on time. They stick to it. It's good.
It's just expensive.
It's just very expensive, yes. Let's not talk about 80 years. But anyway, so predictions time. 2025, what's going to look most different in the measurement landscape? Tell us one fascinating idea or something you expect to see.
I expect to see that attention will be more important. And I expect to see that we will be planning on attention and not necessarily trading on attention. I do hope and believe that we will be better respecting what the platforms are created for. So if there is a connected TV platform which is appropriate for 15-seconders, that's what it's appropriate for and that's what we use it for. And I hope and believe that we should be able to measure the things that they were designed to deliver.
Awesome. Rob?
Trade on frequency across all screen. So I think you keep your linear budget because you can't change that. And then the rest, if you've got real-time data, you'll be able to learn efficiencies and drive incremental growth and touch points for the audience. So I think that's where 2025 will be.
Cool. Kristin?
Optimization and attribution with the client requesting it and helping really come to the right outcomes for the benefit of everyone.
Mike? Last one.
Well, I think addressable maturity will become a differentiator for advertisers. I think
You don't mean targeting old people?
No, no. I mean, how well developed is your addressable strand? And I love the work that Finecast put out this week on neuroscience and the long-term effect of addressability. And I think we'll start seeing a real differential between those that have got an addressable strategy and those that don't in an advertiser space.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the addressable measurement and currency. The alternative measurement. It's addressable on the mind now. That was the measurement and currency track. We're done. I think it's coffee time. Thank you so much to the panel.
Thank you.